I have no fancy PowerPoint presentation. I'm busy these days keeping the business running. So, but I do like to talk. Jordan knows this, and I appreciate the invitation. And thank you all for coming here today and listening to me share my experiences. I'm from Surrey, British Columbia, just the other side of the border. You too?
No.
Okay, well that's close enough. Cool. You and me, baby. So I started off in 1980 when I begged my father to get me a computer of any kind. I got a TRS-80. I had 16K of memory. I was in arcades. I dumped every dollar I was given into a Space Invaders or something, similar at the time. I love video games so much. I got my computer. I sat learning how to code. I didn't really understand anything, so I sort of just fell into this hole, which was programming the thing, right? It was like basic, okay, too slow, assembly, what's that? Hand optimized, unwound assembly to make the graphics go really fast is where I kind of ended up. And then I went backwards from there, got my first job in 1989 at Distinctive Software in Burnaby. I somehow found myself in the role of designer. It was like really, well, it was because no one else was there to do the design work. So I did that. That was Hardball 2, and then 4D boxing, and then triple play baseball. And I was not a big baseball fan. I kept talking about how I want to blow things up. So and I was really I was completely into blowing things up. So of course I finally left what had become Electronic Arts Canada and started at a little company, which was starting to become a big company. It was called Humongous Entertainment right here in Woodinville. And you guys know Humongous, and did a game called Total Annihilation, which was blowing everything up from the name to everything blows up. I was trying to make a strategy game. It wasn't a whole lot of strategy. Just take everything you've got and throw it in. Actually, a lot of wars are fought like that, actually, so it wasn't too far off. But I found myself, when I started Gas Powered Games, in this position of going, what am I going to do for story? So I didn't really understand story. In fact, I kind of tried to avoid story because it's not my strength. In the business, one of the things I found out in my 23 years in this business is do what you're good at. Find someone who's good at the other jobs that you don't like to do those jobs. And the problem that you run into with story back in 2000 and 2000 hell, I don't even remember, 98. In 98, when we started doing Dungeon Siege, it was like we didn't have full-time writers that you hire, people that, there wasn't room on the budget necessarily for a writer. And I knew there's this problem in my gut where I went, well, if I hire a writer, they're going to try to design the whole game from the writing position, right? And I'm going to have the whole art team trying to create assets to satisfy the vision of the world that the writer has. So this was a bit of a dilemma for me. And ironically, this is when I met Jordan. Because I remember Microsoft had just picked up Jordan's company, FOSSA, and Jordan was the creative director over at Microsoft. So they're like, Microsoft's publishing the game, and they're like, we got a problem on Gas Powered Games. Send in Jordan. So Jordan comes over. Hey, Chris, how's it going? Real casual, throws an arm around me. Hey, baby, I'm kidding. There was no Hollywood, but it could. This is the way the made-for-TV movie's going to go. Your story is essentially shit, and we need to prop it up. That was, the basic message. So, I'm like, this is tough. So we basically chipped away at the problem. And I don't think I'm not good at taking advice. I'm really not. Just my whole life. I want to do things my own way. I'm stubborn. The child brain is in full force. There's no adult brain in my head whatsoever. I want to take my pants off right now. I mean, who would do that? What adult would do that? Thank you for laughing at that. Hi, camera. Hi, world. The thing is, so I took what Jordan told me. I tried to put it into work. But what I basically did was I said, well, I need a really good bad guy. I need the bad guy to sound like a bad guy. Characters, I knew this, picked it up somewhere. Characters need to sound like the role they play. Bad guys need to sound bad, good guys need to sound good. Merrick the Mage, Merrick, Merritt, Mary, Merrick was a good name. We knew that was good. King Conrad, we had a great king. There's a movie, they made a movie actually. This is no joke. Actually, there's a movie made on this game. You can see King Conrad and Merrick in action. Merrick was played by John Rhys Davies, and Burt Reynolds plays King Conrad. Anybody seen that? Wow, you saw it! How many stars? 0! Ouch, ow. Ow, it was not the story, I hope. Otherwise, I should just leave. So, I tried to pick really archetypical sort of, names these names that fit these archetypical roles in the game. The ultimate bad guy, Gom. Gom. And, that's where I started. One of the things I also knew is you got to be able to pronounce these names, because the geek in, me and all the guys on the team was like, we like to be creative. We like to really reach, and we like to do things that are really interesting. But man, do not do that to a name. And on Dungeon Siege 2, we had the main town you start in was, it's unpronounceable. And I don't know, it's like, you take your eye off the story ball for 1 second, and you come back and you're in the recording studio, and you're trying to coach some actor through it, going, it's Ireland. Like just take your tongue and swish it around in your mouth while you're talking. Like you've got marbles and you're eating a hot dog. Let's try that again. And they're behind the glass going. So, invariably, Ireland is pronounced 6 different ways in Dungeon Siege 2. So I already knew that's tough when you learn a lesson you already knew. Those are tough. But we tried to do that, generally, keeping a story simple and then having that nice, simple, I'm not a storyteller. These are experiences from a guy who's not a storyteller. The experts in storytelling you've heard from today. But these are sort of in the trenches, down and dirty. I tried to create a story that was really simple, and then I brought in, this is my trick, so that I could maintain control of the structure of the game, which meant I wanted to start at a farmhouse, and then I wanted to end up at the end in the dark, secret lair of Gom, right? I didn't want to turn all that power over to a writer, because I needed the structure, because first of all, the game was already underway a year or so we didn't want to have a writer come in and change all this. So I did. I hired Neil Halford. And Neil came in, and he was actually quite pleased. He was like, this is great. You've done a lot of the hard work. You've laid down you've got the tent posts, if you will. You've got the structure in place, and now I can write all the bits in between. And Neil did a great job. I had named the first town you come to in Dungeon Siege Stonebridge. There was no Stonebridge in Stonebridge. Because this is a question everybody asks. It's like, where the hell is Stonebridge? And it's like, no, Neil explained this. This was founded by a guy named Etan Stonebridge, and he was a gambler and a this and that, and that was where he came to settle and everything else. And it actually made the world more interesting to not have everything line up perfectly and be very, very, and he had a lot of fun. He created all the lore. Basically, what I learned in this process is that back history was really important to the game and the franchise. Okay. Now remember, this is going back 12 years, so I'm talking about concepts that a lot of you guys getting out of bed this morning know. You know what I mean? Like, this is stuff that's really, really straightforward. Of course, your fictional universe has got to exist. I think of it as like an underwater landscape, and all you see is the islands in the finished product, right? So you see an island here, an island here, an island here, but under the water, everything connects like a mountain range. And everything makes sense. And so someone comes along, you're hit by a bus, unfortunately, and they come into the process, and they can study and read it all, and they can plug into it. And they know how all the pieces connect underneath. And of course, this is especially the case happened recently in the last couple of years when we brought in, Dungeon Siege 3, I'm trying to keep this high level. Dungeon Siege 3 is being made by a studio called Obsidian down in Los Angeles, And the writers, the really incredible, talented folks said, wow, we love your Dungeon Siege universe. It made it so easy for us to continue to tell the story and to continue to figure out where it all fit, because they had all this information to work from. So it was really important. It was really important that anyone coming in new saw the existing universe and could then, it could be maintained. So that was really good stuff. One of the other big things, because I'm probably going to be out of time soon if I'm lucky. Shit. Where was I? Oh, Supreme Commander. So Supreme Commander, I had a fresh shot at doing a backstory, right? And I'm like, okay, I learned all my lessons. Hopefully Jordan's not going to come over and tell me all the stuff I'm doing wrong. Kidding, I would have loved to have seen you. I thought, you know what I'm going to do this time? Because I think Harry Potter was out, and I think somebody said, J.K. Rowling was using all of these characters in her real life. And I thought, oh, that is such a great idea. Take the weirdest people that you know, frankly, people you don't want to hang out with because they're that weird. But these people are gold when it comes to character. They are just the best. They have the quirkiest things, little things they do. They're picking food out of their teeth or whatever they're doing. It just disgusts you. It's okay. They're great characters. And you just find a way to put them in your game, even if you have to just pound them in there. And this is videotape. So I have some wonderful characters in Supreme Commander that, and I never ever would have got there. And I also have some accidental characters. Like one example is an artist, bless you, ×2, that's like going into the bonus round, drew a jar with like a brain in it. And it was just something to go in the background or whatever. And I said, we've got to make that one of the characters in the game, a brain in a jar. And brain in jars have been done a lot. But I was like, but this brain in jar, this is going to be really weird. It's going to have the entire cerebral, the entire spinal column. It's going to have, there's a computer and the tank. It's going to be, in a tank that glows when the character speaks. And this character, Dr. Gustav Brackman, is the leader, of course, of the great Cyber Nation, if you played any Supreme Commander, and easily one of the best characters of any of the games that I've ever been involved in. Just the most interesting, easily the most ridiculous, and here's how you know if you want to do a litmus test on your character. You walk up to someone, you tell them, and if they go, oh, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard, you know you're on the right track. Okay? People innately, average kind of sampling, hate anything that's not completely established in culture. And I remember telling someone Dungeon Siege is the name of the game, and they're like, Total Annihilation, Supreme Commander, oh, why? Because it's the highest ranking military official in a given theater of war, maybe, and that's who you are. So was I too on fire with that? I like to get into the character of the flamboyant guy who's talking about games. I do this entire presentation in an English accent, so just to save you the strain, the ear strain, I thought I'd do it. Christopher, I go by Chris. Only my mother calls me Christopher when I'm in trouble, of course. So Supreme Commander, everything that seems like I ever thought of that was a little outside the box, got pushed back. So any new business concept I have, anything, I love a little bit of pushback. So to me, that fuels the fire, the creative fire, to make something cool and new, because God, those people, if you don't manage that energy, well, they can really bum you out anyway. So it's really great to take that negative energy and say, this is affirmation that I'm on the right track. I think I spend a lot of my time managing creative. So just as a finish on creative, you find yourself editing yourself, going back to James? No, shit. James? Yeah. Okay, sorry. We just met. I'm trying this whole I'm really nervous and sweaty thing. How's that coming across? The editing your ideas out. So let me tell you something. I was talking to someone who does a blog, very funny blog, and they were like, God, I was writing this thing, and I went this direction with it, and went that, and I said, you know what I do? I write it all down, every idea, the dumbest ideas. Every single thing has to go down on paper, and then things change in the world. Like you might have been working on, Fight Club, and then the 9/11 thing happened. You might have wanted to go over here next. Now that came up first, so it was a little awkward, right? But the fact is, you got to have lots of stuff that you're kind of cooking on. And I find that these days, I'm working on new game concepts. I'm working on. If you guys have seen the Age of Empire video blogs, you seen those video blogs? The Age of Empire ones, though, so ridiculous, hilarious, right? Like I'm just cooking these ideas up, and we're throwing them out there, and it's fun. But there's editorial review, right? So it goes over for approval. There's legal review, and so there's a potential that it's going to get shot down. So I have to have another one, and I have to have another one ready to go. So I don't edit. I just take all my ideas and I just talk about them and I throw them down and I make notes, and it's really important not to throw an idea away in your own mind. Just don't let it die there. Let it go, keep going and getting better, and something might happen that makes it in the world that makes it a good idea or maybe makes it a worse idea. So I really enjoy that. I start to think I'm a little crazy because I'm constantly swirling around in this ethereal thing of creative. But man, the more I do it, the more fun it is, and the luckier I think I am as a person to be able to have gotten away with it as long as I have, till somebody finds out that I'm full of shit. So I'm really hoping I can keep going. So, but not on this talk. Are we transitioning ever so smoothly into Q&A? Because I know you've got questions, and by God, I don't have answers, but I'm going to make stuff up. I love making stuff up on the fly.
One of the larger problems with integrating story or gameplay and writing is that writers are brought in too late into the game.
Sure. I mean, if you're doing a game like Assassin's Creed, which is Jeff's example, thank you, you got to have your stuff together, right? I mean, from 1989 to today, the world has changed. In 98 to now, the world has changed. But you also have some different structure in place that really, and budget. Remember, my point was, I couldn't hire a full-time writer person that I could sit there and work with it every day. I mean, there wasn't the budget. So it was kind of we had a different problem. It was like back in the day when I was starting on, my very first professional game, Hardball 2. It was like, I was the only guy on the team. I had a tools guy, very smart man who provided the low-level libraries that developed these tools across the whole company. And I had a little slice of art, had a little slice of a composer, and some sound effects. So, I was it. And so it wouldn't have mattered if I would have said, well, I think I've identified a need here for a writer to come in and spruce up this baseball game. It wouldn't have mattered. It just wouldn't have mattered. But today, of course, if you're working one of these big projects, you're BioWare, you're going to do Dragon Age 3 or 4, you want to have that writer. That writer hopefully is the writer that was on the first two. And they know the lore of the world, and they've been working with that team so long that they can just get right in there and do it. My thing was, I was nervous and I was afraid too. I didn't want to go to a contractor until I had the ends nailed down of my world, and then, but there's a lot of variables, a lot of moving parts. So you're doing the, yes?
Christopher.
That's all I got.
That was good.
So, Richard Garriott did a keynote at Login a couple of days ago, and one of the things he said about storyline was that regardless of how long or deep the story of the world is, there is like one sentence like a mission statement that encapsulates the whole story that he's trying to tell. Do you agree with that? Do you do that?
Yeah, I think so.
Could you give us an example?
Well, the trouble is the only real great example I had was my Dungeon Siege example, because in Supreme Commander I have 3 possible endings. So I can't really honestly answer that. So no. I mean, just so we're all our cards are on the table, I do not consider myself a story guy to the degree that you are, right? I am a guy who's...
My whole story is one sentence, so I get that just coming in the door. But I thought it was interesting because I'm in the position now where I have to write a fairly long backstory, and I thought it was interesting that even that story should probably grow out of one thought, because that will make every other decision a little easier.
Yeah, well, that was my idea, and that was my prevailing thought in Dungeon Siege. Just have one bad guy who's your job to get vengeance on him, which sounds really, really pathetic if you're trying to really, do something creatively different. Like if you're trying to flex your muscle in storytelling, it's basically, Mel Gibson in Payback. Someone burns down his house, kills his family, and he's got to work his way all the way up through the drug lord chain till he gets to the top guy and kill. Actually made a pretty good movie, but the concept is really simple. But if you're sitting down at the keyboard and you're Christopher Nolan, that's probably not going to scratch your itch. You're like, yeah, multiple levels into a dream thing. You know what I mean? If you guys seen Inception, right? It's like you have to see the movie to understand the concept, because it is complex, but it does really just gets the itch scratched, right? He can feel very good. He did something. I don't think that interactive entertainment, a video game where you're playing, you're clicking on guys and you're upgrading weapons and spells, and was the place to do Inception, right? So I knew I could kind of have a simple story arc and get away with it, Although some people, I got a lot.
Inception video game. Yeah.
Who wants to fund the Inception video game?
I want enough money to buy an elephant. It's not for the elephant, it's for the money. Do you have anybody else? Who's next? I see some elbows up. Jordan?
So, in Dungeon Siege, in Supreme Commander, you have rich backstories, right? How do you express that to the audience without getting into the kind of classic Nintendo click, 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 past all the, oh yeah, they're saying shit, who cares? Bam, 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 get to the next game, next time where stuff starts blowing up.
And
what's the balance point between getting the story across but not losing your audience?
The game is the water, right? You don't really tell all the backstory, you just know it's there. In the islands metaphor, right? There's very little of it that actually does come through at the top, and it makes sense because it's under the water, right?
yeah, and really, I knew as a player, I find all the reading that was thrown up in a typical RPG to be just painful. I want to go back to clicking. So I was like, how do you keep it really short? So of course you do it in a greeting at the storekeeper. You try to do it in all of those little tiny moments that happen. We did have our big opening where at the very beginning of the game, long ago, and we did that. And that, we kept it pretty short, and we dropped you right into the game. And it was really important to me that you be playing the game when you got dropped into the game. Some games give you the big long story intro, and then they drop you straight into town, where you got to go around town, meet every single shopkeeper, and oh my child, you're like, oh. Before you use this rusty butter knife, you're like,
Tell you all this backstory I wrote.
I'm going to tell you a bunch of backstory. Right, thank you. Thanks for that. I know where it's going. And so I wanted to get right into the game. And even our tooltips and our tutorial, we crushed everything down. And I think it was to the success of the game. I think the game was successful. And you want double topping? John Kimmick, the man who signed that deal with me, is sitting right over there in the blue shirt. How about that? And my mom is in the back, and my grade 1 teacher is just over here. You wouldn't? No, right, exactly. What were you thinking? So,
I'm always that guy.
keep it going. Yeah.
How do you reconcile like the strengths of just writing every single smart and dumb idea with the practicality of, well, this may not happen in 6 months. Like, where do you draw the line? Saying, you know what, this idea is great enough that we'll spend additional resources in. Wait, this idea is great too, but we just don't have the
Because it's free to write ideas down, and I do hundreds and hundreds of emails a day. I started hunting and pecking, like, where's the Z? Remember those days? It was just me. Anyway, to talking to the kids, yeah, that's very interesting. You got to get new batteries, put them up on the shelf over there. You know, like just streams of, so it's like you get ideas, just lay them down. I put them everywhere in my phone, in a notebook. I think ideas are more fun. Do you find this more fun when you write them down in a notebook, old style? Like, if you're in Amsterdam in a cafe drinking a coffee, and you're.
A notebook is faster. It's just that you would have to write it down again.
It's just, I don't know what it is. It's the idea's richer. Anyhow, anybody like notebooks over computers? Just feels good, right? Yeah, Moleskines for the win. Wow, it's like you're on like notebook crack.
iPad, what else we got?
I didn't mean it, but no. Okay. I didn't mean for this to, anybody Catholic? I didn't mean for this to turn into a confessional. But I probably have at least 40 unopened in the shrink wrap notebooks at home. There it is. But, it's cheaper than getting a plane or having a boat moored down on the lake. You know what I mean? I have $712 in notebooks. I think that's pretty responsible. Go ahead, you're the moderator, right?
Yeah. So when it comes time to pitch a story idea, to put a game together, how much of the characters do you already have ready, or is it mostly you have a plot arc and some game concepts? Like, is it really fully complete, or do you come in and say, well, here's what I want the story to be about, and here's what's kind of going to happen, and then later you start introducing the wacky stuff?
Well, this is going to disappoint you, this answer, because I feel like today, right now, we're back to 1991. I'm back to... I'm going backwards. I'm loving making. I'm doing games that literally I don't have to localize them because there's no language in them. Pictures, ideas with pictures in them that illustrate a concept rather than written text. So I'm going away from that, and the budgets for the industry's kind of splitting into two, right? You got the BioWares out there; they're doing their really big games. I mean, ballparky, $50 to $120 million games, and the rest of the industry going towards $1 to $5 million games, $200,000 games. So if I was one of you and I had an idea, and I wasn't already in, I was trying to, I'd be like, this is an opportunity I missed in 1991. And given that some of you probably weren't born yet, you can no longer feel bad about missing that train, right? Because you've got an opportunity now to go and take your idea, create your Angry Birds, right? And get it out there. And wow, the train came back. Because when you start talking about story and character, you're probably not going to find someone who wants to produce something that's not an established franchise, something that's, essentially the risk is like this. I mean, when you're going to spend $100 million, the risk has to almost be zero, almost, okay? There's only a few companies in the world who probably would do it, like maybe 5. So what could you do? You can tell your story with hand puppets or some fresh artistic style that the world has either not seen in a while or not seen at all, like when we first saw South Park. That was like, really like, wow, you can do so much with crude cutout characters because the writing is poignant or something, meaningful at some level. If you're me and you're sophomoric humor is your thing, right? I'm actually growing up a little bit, but not enough, really. But that's a great example. If you're better off to take a concept and a story and to do it with that kind of production sensibility or qualities, because it's pretty. I'd say it's like going to Hollywood and say I'm going to be a movie star right now to try to get your game made. It's kind of. And so why do it? Why not? I mean, like if you think about this world, it just completely flipped around. If you want to make an interesting soap that's like carved into a shape of a squirrel, I mean, try to imagine yourself opening a store in Woodinville, to sell those. But now you've got the entire world on the internet. So now all 73 people worldwide who are interested in squirrel soap can get access to it. You just need them to pay $3,000 a piece. But at least you found your customer, right? Well, the same thing goes for really cool and interesting new forms of storytelling with wild characters that you could never have gotten out there. I think it's super exciting. I'm jazzed. I'm so excited. I want to literally go work on something right now. Excuse me. No.
Are there certain resources that are your favorites to go back to for inspiration, or certain places that you find lead you in these new story directions?
I find that anything that lands on my doorstep is inspiring to me now, because there's so much content flying around. It's like you're in a content food fight that goes on 24 hours a day. And you think about your customer, your target, they're in that same thing, right? They're in that same sort of hurricane of content. And you can go for 5 years or, 3 years and never know about Mad Men, And then you watch an episode of Mad Men and you're like, whoa, this is good. And you tell somebody and they go, oh, have you seen this and this and this and this and this? And you're like, oh, okay. So there's not enough hours in the day. How do you fit Minecraft in when you're watching all those TV shows? So I find that I get inspired by everything that comes at me. I don't like cliche stuff, so I try to stay away from cliche stuff. I like bold, original stuff. I'm getting older. I have 4 children, so I tend to like stuff that actually creates value for the person watching. I know, actually was the word, right? Little asterisk around asking. Because I actually think it's important to have some vitamin in the content. Because if you're going to watch it, you might as well learn something, And that's what's really motivated me these days. Yeah.
How would you define value?
Basically teaching players, kids, that you don't have to kill everything in the world to enjoy yourself. That building things and creating things is, I dare say, more fun than destroying everything in the world. You know what I mean? Total construction. It's a great idea. You march an army into your enemy's base and build it up even bigger. What's that?
I was saying I would buy the game, get it out on exit.
Yeah, well, we're working on some stuff that we can't talk about yet, which is me doing exactly that. And a question was put to me by a producer. Is there forms of conflict in this game? And I said, you know what? I am trying everything I can to build a entertainment experience without conflict. So it's a hard problem to solve, but such a great problem to solve. And this is coming from a guy who made Total Annihilation, which is pretty weird, right? But I've gone full circle, and like I said, I have the kids, and I look at these kids and I watch what these kids are playing, and they are generally they can't get their hands on much that isn't killing, and even the best games are still killing. Like if you pick the stuff that's the most family, there's still killing going on in it, or destruction. So I'm really excited about the future. I'm thinking of it as, instead of video games, I'm thinking about it as entertainment, interactive entertainment, but not as a marketing term. Also, the concept of amusement. Like, we don't have to sell, you don't have to have a score, you can be in a sandbox, you just play, you can just build. Amusement, what's TV? You know, on TV, you sit there and you're amused. I have this talk I gave for years about 4 fingers and a thumb. So you had music, you sat there and listened to it. You had TV, you sat there and looked at it. You had film, you sat there and you looked at it. And books, you sat here and you read, right? And these were all super valid forms of entertainment. But in video games, it was like the thumb. It had to kind of go and do all this other crazy stuff. And I was like, no, video games can be amusing and almost as passive. And so guess what? Now we have Cityville. 100 million people a month are playing Cityville. And it's probably the most like the other 4 that we've ever seen, and the most number of people in the world are actually able to play. So it kind of tells me the big lesson here is we've been kind of going in the wrong direction for 20 years. Or at least we haven't been servicing all of our customers. And unfortunately, it looks like we've been servicing a fraction of the possible customer base that we could have been entertaining.
I think we've got time just for one more quick question.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess the next question is, like, how do you reconcile, like, the opportunity to grab that other 95% of the potential market while sort of servicing the 5% of gamers, hardcore gamers out there? Like, I mean, when the developer of Angry Birds is saying, you know what, console games are dead. I think this is where games are headed. How do you reconcile that statement?
Well, you know, I like to use the car as an analogy. The price of fuel can go to $10 a gallon. You're still going to see a truck on the road, you know, because there's a customer who needs a truck, and they can't put the piano in the back of their smart car. So, you know, at some level, you have to understand there's all these customers out there. So you have to build different games for all of them. The shooter is not going away, you know, first-person shooters, right? You know, all the various entertainment genres, but there are much bigger ones that we have yet to discover. And they all fit together. They don't have to be reconciled using, you know, quantum electrodynamics or some other unification theory. How do you like that, eh? Uh-huh. Because I read that once. Because they all fit, because there's all different kinds of people in the world. I'm crazy about Minecraft. I love Minecraft. I think it is the greatest thing ever. And I talk to some people and they go, nope. Like, Minecraft's a total zero, just dead for them. And I'm like, well, different strokes for different folks. And my mission is not always to create games for the biggest possible audience. I'm not just doing this for money. In fact, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of not doing this for money. Kimmich does not want to hear that I wasn't doing it for money. Yeah, exactly. Well, sorry, John, right? I was doing it for the fun. I was doing it because it was there to do, right? I wanted to do it because I'd made RTS and I wanted to do RPG. You know, and yes, I'd like to be able to pay my mortgage. But if you told me that the real market is, you know, over there and it's all about little bunnies, which I'm not quite there yet. I'm not to bunnies yet. I'm into rabbit soap. But bunnies is going to be check back with me. I wouldn't just run over there, abandon everything, and make the little bunny game just because I thought I was going to do really well at it financially. I tend to do things that really get me excited. And the older I get, the more I've come to connect with who I am inside to make the things that I really want to do. So we need everybody's idea in this room, every individual's idea to make it into the world so the world can vote on your creation and decide if they want more of it or not. And if you want to make more of it, whether you're making $100 or $1 million, there's it's all good.
All right.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.